Ellen White Reconsidered, a series of presentations for people who have questions about Ellen White's writings. Today our subject will be, what led you to accept negative views of Ellen G. White? Hey, welcome. I've got a question that's been coming across my mind as I have been discussing different subjects with different people. First of all, my channel is entitled Ellen White Reconsidered. That should tell you that if you are here, it's because you want to reconsider Ellen White. Maybe you've had a negative view and you'd like to look at things again. Maybe you've met somebody, maybe you've read something that she wrote, and it's given you a different pause. You wanted to think about something again. That's what this channel is for. It's for rethinking about Ellen White. But a lot of the folks who come here don't come for that reason. They come to rain on anybody's parade that still believes in Ellen White. And that's unfortunate. I could just dismiss them out of hand and say, why bother coming here? I mean, this is for people who want to reconsider Ellen White. And that's not what you want to do. You want to bring up negative stuff. You want to try to force something down my throat. You want to show me something that you think I've never seen before, which I have seen before, generally. So why? So this is a question that came to my mind. What is it that makes you believe the critic before the supporter? What is that? What happened? What is there in your life that made you look at things in a negative way? Because it really is just that. I have answered a number of these questions, and somebody will say, "What about this?" And I'll say, "Well, have you seen this? Do you know about this? What about this? Well, do you know about this information?" To put it in a different context. And I keep going again, and then they're throwing one more question or another question. And it isn't as if that when they throw the questions, that, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I hadn't thought about that before. Oh, thank you. I hadn't thought about that before. It's, you're a liar. You're deceiving people. You're whatever. And I'm just presenting information that they are not considering in their appraisal. So that's what came to my mind. What is it that happens in a person's life that they see a person as negative and they can't see them as positive at all, even if things are shown them that are positive? I have stated my bias from the beginning in numerous videos that my experience with Ellen White has been a positive one. And that if I have ever had any kind of negative experience about it, it's been because of somebody who took her in a way that was not wholesome. And therefore, I don't judge her. I just recognize the source. So what is it? That's the question. And so I'm creating this video with that question in mind. I can suggest some things because as I read one critic's book, and he said from the very beginning that his dad questioned Ellen White and said, oh, she's all wet about this and that and the other. So he had a bias from the start. He had somebody in his life that he respected who questioned her, and therefore he began to look at things in a negative light. I think this is an important exercise, not just for Ellen White, but for other people. And I run into this all the time. There are people who I agree with on certain things, say politically, that will make a statement about somebody, and I'll say, I don't think that's fair. I don't see that evidence. And even though that other person I don't necessarily agree with on a number of subjects politically, I will spend the time to look up the information and send them that information. And nobody ever calls me so-and-so apologist. They just either ignore me or just go on. But when it comes to protecting the credibility of somebody that I have come to trust, somebody who has had a very positive influence in my life and has had a positive influence on many people around me, and whose messages have brought me closer to Jesus. They've also caught me in things that I realized I was doing that I shouldn't do, but have always continued to encourage me. So this is the one. This is the video where you can place your vitriol. Now, don't come to me with, oh, she stole all this stuff from all these people. I've already answered that. If you haven't watched those videos, you need to. I've already answered that. You're going to say she's a plagiarist. I've already answered that. There are many, many different ways that has been answered. So don't tell me that's the reason why you don't like her, that you think she's vile or whatever. Some of you have never, ever really looked at a positive side of her. You've only read the sites that say bad things about her. And the reason for that has nothing to do with those things that she's saying, but because Seventh-day Adventists say that the seventh-day Sabbath is still obligatory for all human beings if you know the true God. And you don't want to do that. And so you fight against her while you think, well, if I can get rid of Ellen White, I can get rid of the Sabbath. Sorry. The Sabbath stands alone. The Sabbath is built on Scripture, and the scriptural basis for it stays the same. By the way, before I did any work on Ellen White, I wrote a book on the Sabbath. So you can't tell me stuff that I don't know about that. It's biblical. So that may be your bias. You'd like to shoot down Seventh-day Adventists because they're putting a cramp in the style of other Christians because they keep the Sabbath and they think others ought to. Well, I don't present it that way at all, because when God gave the Sabbath, and we're going to go on a side here on the subject of the Sabbath, but when God gave the Sabbath in the beginning, he blessed it and sanctified it. There is a blessing. And we're not the only ones that are talking about the Sabbath blessing. And we're not just talking about the Jews either. There are lots of Christians who say, yeah, there's a real blessing to set aside a day to worship God, to cut down on the things that you're doing, not be crazy busy. There are people that attend church on Sunday, but also take the Sabbath because they recognize they got a day. It's a blessing, a day of rest. And some of those that argue for that say, well, I do it on Sunday. And I say, one person asked me that and said, well, isn't the important thing? It's always interesting when somebody says the important thing, because it's like, well, there's only one thing that's important. Anyway, the important thing is that we take time for God. And I thought about it and I said, well, as opposed to not taking time for God, I guess that is the important thing. But while you're taking special time for God, that is a day, special day for God, why not ask him? And where does he tell you that? Well, some people get their messages from subjectively. And so they can tell you all kinds of things, that they feel impressed to do. Well, maybe God is impressing, maybe he isn't. But what about the Bible? That would be a good place to look. Anyway, back to our subject. What is it that flipped the switch? What is it that you had a fairly positive view of her, but then you said, no, I can't see that. And so you started gathering up these things, like the people that I've been discussing this with. They keep they'll bring up this or that or that or that. And I can answer that, and I can answer that, and I can answer that, and I can answer that. But I don't think I'm really getting to the issue, because when I answer one thing, they throw another thing. When I answer it, they throw another and another and another. So really, it seems to me that there's something else going on there. What is it? If there's anybody that's honest enough to push aside all of that kind of garbage, say, oh, she contradicts the Bible. Well, she contradicts your view of the Bible, maybe, and maybe you're wrong. Or maybe your church is wrong. I mean, obviously, there are churches that are wrong because they're not all saying the same thing. So what is it? If there's something, some experience, some person, some negative vibe, some oppressive feeling, some whatever it is, tell me in the comments. It's your turn. Well, thanks for joining today. That's all the subject that I'm going to present. We'll come back with some other things, some good positive stuff in future videos. So join us if you're willing to reconsider Ellen White.